on the consumer. Oftentimes, everybody hears Department of Agriculture Trade and they stop listening, and we get left off as the forgotten child. But we represent the consumer protection side, and we do exactly that. And we do that in a couple different ways. The first is we operate a hotline that you can call in, and you get a live person, and you get a live person right away. And I say that because I take a lot of pride in the response time that we have. It's usually less than a minute. You'll wait and you'll get somebody, and you can ask them a variety of questions you have, where you think you were scammed, or you heard about a scam, or you want more information on a variety of topics. They can point you in the right direction, tell you they're on the phone, mail it to you, send you an email, however you want to get it. So that's a really great resource that is free, and a lot of people should take advantage of if they can. The other resource that we offer is complaint mediation. And if you have a transaction with a business that didn't quite go right, or you think that maybe you've taken advantage of or didn't get what you were owed, you can file a complaint with us, and we will mediate between you and the business to try and get a resolution that fits both parties. And we'll also look to make sure that those businesses are operating within the parameters of the law, and that they're doing the things that they should be, because we try and also pride ourselves on regulating and keeping a fair business marketplace, both for the businesses and for the consumers. And then the last thing we do is a lot of outreach, because we really want to try and get our message out there. So many times people aren't even aware of the risks or the threats that are out there, and just a little bit of awareness or education can go a long way in seeing those red flags and making sure that you don't fall victim, which is why I really appreciate the opportunity to do this today.
Awesome. Yeah, and I appreciate you being here to lend your expertise. I will say, when AARP does presentations in the community, DATCAP is always my first point of contact for people. So thank you for all the work that you do. So I know you guys cover a lot of different scams and fraud, but I wanted to focus specifically on robocalls today. So can you explain what is a robocall and how does it work?
Sure. So I'm sure everyone you're listening here today has received one of these, including myself. I've gotten probably half a dozen already this morning, and they're tremendously annoying. But how they work are, they're typically a computer program that is running a mass number of phone numbers through its program and sending out these phone calls. And this has really taken off with the advent of voice over internet protocol, sometimes called VoIP. And what that really means is computer calling. And when computer calling became a big deal, it made it super easy for these criminals to make hundreds of thousands of phone calls, usually for free, over through these lines. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't come in on regular phone calls, because we all know on our cell phones we're getting them. But with this technology, what it does is it creates a program that says either it has a list of phone numbers and it calls all those numbers in the list, or it just randomly makes up phone numbers and says, we're going to send them all out, and we hope that we get somebody live on the call. And the purpose of a robocall is to try and get your information. That's the number one thing they're trying to do, whether that be your banking information, your social security number, anything that they can use to try and exploit either your identity or to try and steal some money from you.
Awesome. So I know you said a lot of these are kind of, a computer generating these phone numbers, but when you mentioned there's like a list of phone numbers that they're sometimes calling, like where are they getting those phone numbers from?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it can come from a variety of ways. There are a lot of companies that if you don't pay attention to the terms and conditions when you're signing up for something, or you buy something, or you say, hey, maybe I want to get more information, they'll take those lists and they'll sell them. So you may have signed up to get the newspaper, and unbeknownst to you, now all of a sudden you're getting bombarded with phone calls for a variety of other topics that have nothing to do with the newspaper. And that's because that particular newspaper may have sold their contact list. And this happens across all industries. And that's how one way that you can get it. Another is, and this is one that even I didn't know, where you may inadvertently sign up to receive more phone calls when you may be applying or submitting a ticket into a raffle, or you want to win a prize. So many times maybe we're at the fair or we're walking through a business and we see that car sitting out there and it says enter here to win. Oftentimes somebody is able to win the car, but the reason those are so successful is because the information that they're gathering from that raffle is what's actually worth more than the car is. And then they'll take those phone numbers and that information and they'll sell that list and they'll make money off of selling it. Oftentimes that's how the lists get generated.
And it is absolutely insane. And I know, sometimes once these lists kind of exist, criminals sell them to each other too. So it's like once it's out there, it just continues to kind of propagate across, criminal networks. So one question that I feel like people might have on their minds right about now is what about the do not call registry? So can you talk about that and kind of its purpose?
You bet. So we here at DATCAP, we administer the state's Do Not Call program. And what that is, it's a list of phone numbers that registered telephone solicitors are prohibited from calling and making sales solicitations to. Now, there's a couple key terms that I use there that we have to pay attention to, and that is registered telephone solicitors. So here in Wisconsin, anytime you're going to call someone with the intent of selling them or offering a promotion or trying to get any type of business engagement there, you have to register with us. And when you do register with us, you're conversely prohibited from calling anyone that's on the do not call list. Now, that is successful in that little kind of scope, that almost sometimes narrow scope where it does apply. The problem with robocalls is oftentimes it's someone either overseas or it's a business or even a person that isn't registering and they really don't care because they have kind of a nefarious intent to why they're calling you in the first place. So they're not going to register with us or the federal government and say, hey, this is who I am. And just so you know, I'm out there trying to steal information. They're going to do it behind the scenes. So just when you have so many of us that are on the do not call list, but we continue to get these annoying phone calls. And that's because these criminals are just ignoring it. So the list is successful for those businesses. And there's a lot of businesses and companies that do comply with the law and they register and they make sure they don't call, because it's both, for us, we can take action and also it's a federal offense. So there are penalties for it, but it's not foolproof. And there's one other area that if I could take a minute to mention on this do not call list real quick, because we're coming into the season. There are some exceptions when you're on the do not call list on certain types of calls that are allowed and permitted by law. One of those are political campaign solicitations. So as we're coming up here in Wisconsin to a governor's election in November, you're going to hear or probably going to receive more and more phone calls or text messages from political campaigns. And if you're on that do not call list, it's important just to know that those are allowed and that those campaigns aren't violating the law. They're fully compliant. The other one I like to throw caution to is charities. Charity solicitations are also allowed to make phone calls, even if you're on the list. But that, of course, is probably a separate discussion we can have about charity awareness and how to make sure you're smart on who you give to. But we'll leave that for another session.
And if people heard that and they were like, ooh, I want to know more about that, hopefully we're going to be covering that in November. So, but yeah, that is a whole other ball of wax, those charity scams. So awesome. So the do not call list, I feel like, is one of the big things that people, often ask about when we're out in the community. So I really appreciate you kind of clarifying the terms that it operates on and that it is successful for what it's meant to do. So what should consumers do if they do get one of these robocalls?
The easiest thing and the thing we say every single time is just hang up. Don't say anything, don't push anything, just immediately hang up. And the reason that we say that is for, there's two reasons really. The first is some of these robocall programs are very sophisticated. And when they're calling, all they're looking for is somebody to answer, and they're looking for some type of voice recognition. So even your hello, is anyone there? That computer program will recognize that they have a live person on the line. And then what they'll either do is kick it into an automated message that's going to try and solicit some information from you. Or in some cases, they'll actually automatically connect you with some other type of fraudster that's on the line. So you're talking to a live person trying to steal your information. And so by not saying anything on the line, it doesn't trigger that on the other side to let them know, hey, here's somebody who might be a victim. The second is pushing buttons. Oftentimes these robocall messages will say, press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish, press 3, here's the important one, to stop receiving our phone calls. Well, oftentimes people are very inclined to say, I don't want to receive these anymore, so I'll press 3. And most of the time that's just a trick to get you to press 3. That pressing that number lets them know, again, they have a live person on the line, and they'll go through one of those two things I just talked about.
Yeah, I feel like this is hugely helpful because I do think a lot of people like to answer the phone, and once they realize it's a scammer, they kind of say like, oh, I'm just gonna mess around with this guy and waste their time. But you're kind of then just setting yourself up to get more phone calls. Once they know you're a real person, like they're not gonna stop calling you just because you are kind of a hassle. Like they're gonna call you more because they know you're a real person. So we always say like, yeah, don't answer the phone. If it's a real person, they're gonna leave a message. So I hugely appreciate you, going into details about when you push those buttons and say hi and stuff like that. So we're Midwest nice. We want to answer the phone and say hello, but just don't answer your phone anymore is kind of the takeaway.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a good point, and this is something that came up in a different conversation I was having, and I hear this quite a bit of consumers who will get these phone calls, and then they'll say, well, you know what, I'm gonna give them a taste of their own medicine, and I'm gonna sit and waste their time, and I'm gonna talk to them for half an hour. And if that does bring some personal satisfaction, I'm sure, but I just want to make sure everybody's aware that you are doing so, and you're inheriting some risks by doing that. The first is you have confirmed that not only is there a live person, but also somebody who's willing to engage in a conversation. So they may not get you on that one, but they may say, hey, you know what? We recognize they want to talk to us, and maybe they're doing it out of, whatever their intentions are, but they might try and put a slicker person on the phone, or somebody that's a little bit a different ruse on what they're going to do. And that leads into the second aspect of, we have heard, doesn't happen often, but some that have gone and started these conversations with the intent of messing with them or telling them, hey, I don't want you calling me, and unsuspectingly engaging in conversation where they don't buy anything, but they give away more information than they even realize. And that's the part where, all of us are, we're smart, we're savvy, we think, what's going on, but every once in a while, these ruses work, and if they didn't work, they wouldn't keep using them, and we wouldn't keep hearing about the same ones, and we wouldn't have people falling victim to them. So I just say, number one, hang up, exactly what you said, don't push anything, but if you are going to engage, just recognize you are bringing some risks with it.
Yeah, awesome. So kind of, I feel like at this point we know our prevention strategies: don't answer, hang up the phone, don't push any buttons. But education and outreach can only go so far on some of these things. So what is the government doing to kind of put a stop on these things happening in the first place?
Well, with that one, I guess I'll start with kind of different tiers of government, and I'll start with us here at the state. So we have an investigation unit that I will say we always have. Well, I'm going to say far too many investigations into no-call complaints, telephone solicitors, these types of scams, and then the types of scams that are being perpetrated is, again, a different topic to talk about, but they all start with these phone calls. And so one thing we do is we do actively investigate these companies, and that's why it's important to report them to us so that we have awareness. And it's just as simple. We even have a self-service that you can call in, leave the phone number, and that's even enough for us to go off of, because if we identify a pattern, there are some tools that we have to kind of look into and do some digging to find out who's making the phone calls, what's happening. So, we actively investigate. We've successfully prosecuted dozens of companies for this. Some of them we have, press releases out that we're proud of, because it is stopping some of it. Is it going to stop it completely? I doubt that we'll ever be able to stop all of it, because we can only control, especially what's here maybe in the States, and once they go overseas, it's a whole different ball of concern. But we actively do that. We also In Wisconsin, there's oftentimes some legislation that gets talked about or considered or even discussed on how we can take a little bit more stronger action on some of these companies. The federal government did pass, it was called the Trace Act. It was like telephone, robocalls, and criminal abuse and deterrence. And what that did is that required cell phone carriers to implement a software program that would screen out those voice over internet calls coming from outside the United States. And they have, a fancy algorithm that would be able to discern that they weren't coming from within the country, and that would screen out. And that helps mitigate some of the calls that actually made it into our cell phones here. And then in addition, the Federal Trade Commission spearheads a lot of these no-call efforts as well to hold larger nationwide companies accountable for mass violations of whether the Robocall list or some of these frauds, or just outright an annoyance for these phone calls that come through. So is it enough to stop all these calls? It's not, but are there big penalties that get imposed? There are, and hopefully that's at least a little bit of a deterrent when we stop getting a few of them.
Yeah, and I will say, I feel like earlier this year I was getting a lot of calls about my car's extended warranty, and that one in particular I've seen kind of drop off. So, I don't know if they're just changing tactics or if something happened, where some of these legislative pieces or, the VoIP protections kind of kicked in where I'm not getting those as much anymore. So, I know we have a couple of attendee questions, and so I just wanted to take a quick second and plug that. I know Michael has gone over a lot of information. If more people have questions, you can drop those in the chat or the Q&A. So I have a few more questions for you, Michael, but I want to take some of these questions from attendees first.
Sure.
So Michelle is asking, so even if you don't answer your phone, your voicemail kicks in after so many rings. Is that also considered to them like hearing a voice on the other end because they heard like your voicemail recording, or like once it goes to voicemail, do they kind of, drop off?
It's a great question. And I can't say specifically to each types of the robocalls because there's a variety of them. I would not be surprised that if, some of these programs saw that as a live number. And, that brings up also a good point is sometimes they're just looking for live numbers. And so if a voicemail picks up, then that might be an indicator to them that somebody's here. And so they might keep calling back because they can see that number's being used. And I mentioned that to go back to my earlier statement where they're not always using a recognized number, list number. They're just generating random numbers and seeing what hits because it doesn't cost them anything. So to that point, I do know there are other programs where they're looking for the actual person in a voicemail. They're able to discern out and see that that's not a person, and they just move on to the next one.
Okay. So I guess kind of as my own personal follow-up for that, then, does it matter if you have a voice recording that's like, you've reached Courtney, leave a message, or if it's just the automated one? Either way, that program is going to recognize like there's a voicemail set up on this and it's a real number. So
yeah, I'm sure there's a few out there, but I would be surprised if most of these robocall programs were sophisticated enough to pick up what's actually being said and then pull out that name. So I don't know that I would necessarily say that, consumers need to go so far as to create a generic phone number. It's certainly there are some privacy advocates that will say, just give the phone number that was reached and that's it. And you can do that. If the goal is to be a little bit more personable, I don't know that's enough of a risk where you have to say, don't leave your name on your voicemail.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. So Julie says she doesn't engage with scam calls, which first of all, thank you, Julie.
Julie.
But she does continue to say, wouldn't mind being a part of political telephone surveys. Is there an easy way to tell them apart early in the call?
Not really. Yeah, the best way I could tell Julie is really you just kind of got to go with your gut on what you think is legitimate and what's not. I will say this to that point, though, it really depends on the questions they're asking. So, one way is, are they truly asking questions about a legitimate race? Are they asking things that, you're inclined to believe are politically motivated? If it at all starts to get away from the campaign, starts talking about, hey, what do you like to do? Or even if they say, hey, we want to gather some demographic information that really isn't, focused on, gender, race, where you live, anything like that. It's, how much do you spend? Where do you work? Things like that. Those would all be red flags that would go up and say, hey, wait a second. And, sometimes you got to get a little bit deeper in to see that. But for me, if any of those questions divert at all away from the actual what you'd expect to come from that survey, might be a red flag you want to think about, to pay a little bit more attention to what information you're giving back to them.
Yeah. And I would say, as someone who worked in a survey center once before, if you want to answer some of the questions and not give them an answer on some of the others, that, I mean, a legitimate political survey is going to be happy to get even pieces of information. So if you start to feel weird about it, you can just say, no, I'm done. So yeah, I wish there was a better way to tell them apart as well.
It's a really great point, Courtney, that I feel oftentimes we're so inclined to just say, don't talk to anyone ever, and don't hit anything, and just break off all communication. And it doesn't need to be the case. And you had a really good point of just being smart about it. And if you want, because there is value to the surveys. And so, and if you want to participate in it, great. But if there's things that you just don't want to share, then just don't share them. It's a good point.
Awesome. We have another question from Jerry, and this brings up something that we haven't covered yet, which I guess I should have asked you about it before. So the caller ID shows that the caller is from a local known number, their pharmacy. How can they use somebody else's phone number for these scam calls?
So great question from Jerry. This is what's called spoofing. And what spoofing is, it's the technology, and we used to think caller ID was great. And prior to, I guess this becoming so rampant, caller ID was a great tool to truly have, let's just say, to have confidence that who's calling you is really there. With the advent of spoofing, with voice over internet calling, some of these technologies, it's getting harder and harder to really have faith that that number that's showing up really is who's on that phone number. And these more complex scams will spoof that number, and they'll tie it to the scam. So let's use Jerry's example with the pharmacy. So what they're going to do is they're going to spoof that number. Looks like that the pharmacy is calling, and they're going to say, hey, we just wanted to confirm your prescriptions. We've got them in here. They're ready for pickup. Can you just verify your last four? Or could you just please verify the payment account, so when you show up, you don't have to pay anything, we got it. Or sometimes they really want Medicare provider information. So they'll say, could you just confirm your Medicare number for us so we can make sure that the billing goes through, so you don't have to wait. All the things seem legitimate. And all of a sudden you unknowingly have given information who you really think is the pharmacy. What we recommend when you have scenarios like that and the calls coming in, you're not really quite sure, ask them to verify what the Medicare number that they have on file for you is. So don't ever give them the number. Just ask them, well, tell me what you have, and I'll let you know if that's correct. And if it is correct, well, then chances they already have the number, so there's no risk in verifying yes it is, because it very well may be the pharmacy. The other thing we recommend is, if you have kind of getting that uneasy feeling, just say, can you hold on a second, I'll call you back. And just call the pharmacy directly from a number that you have. If it's somebody that's a local and or if you don't have it, just hop online. You can find it very easily, and go to the published number and then say, hey, I think you just called me. And they'll say, yeah, we did. Or it's like, we have no idea. And then point for you because you picked up on a scam.
Awesome. And I see there was a question from another attendee, the similar situation, except it was their health clinic. So I will just take this opportunity to say, they will spoof literally anyone and everyone: pharmacy, clinic, Social Security, IRS, Medicare. If you can think about an organization that would be calling you to collect information, they will pretend to be that organization. So, Michael's tip is really great. Say, hey, I'll call you back, or just hang up, whatever, and then call them back at a trusted number if they're asking for personal identifying information or payment, especially. Yeah, you're going to want to hang up and call them back. Awesome. Let's see. We have so many attendee questions. This is so exciting. Let's see. Hillary is saying, I wish there was a way of making the robocalls illegal, which we've kind of covered. We're working on tactics. It seems to me that if we can't answer the phone or if it rings incessantly, the consumer is the one who is hurt. And there's not really a question there, but I will say, Hillary, I 100% agree with the sentiment. And this is why we're trying to do so much outreach to kind of help people recognize these things and avoid them. I guess one thing that I will ask in relation to this, Michael, is, I've heard that there are different kind of services that you can use to additionally block phone numbers. Do any of those actually work?
You read my mind, because I was about to be like, well, I have a couple. We can't stop them. I'm not going to sit here and tell everyone that, hey, if you do this, you'll never receive any, because as quickly as we can put a safeguard in place, 5 people are going to find a way to get around it. So, but there are some things that have proven to be effective. The first is, depending on what kind of phone you have, most of the phones nowadays have a feature that will allow you to try and filter out some of these. I know almost all phones have the ability to block all numbers except those that are recognized in your phone book. Now, will that block out all scam phone calls? It will, but it brings the risk of, you're also going to block out potentially the pharmacy if you don't have that saved in there, the clinic if you don't have it saved in there. And so while it is a solution, sometimes it's not probably the best solution, because you're undoubtedly going to miss phone calls that you did want to receive. The next step to that is to call your phone carrier and ask them what type of blocking filters they have. Most phone carriers now will have additional services. Usually they're free, that you can add in, put in. They can recommend certain apps for whatever phone or carrier that you have. And those have proven to be pretty effective as well. The other one is, if you're using, the FTC ran kind of I wouldn't say a contest, but they ran a program where they offered prizes to companies that could come up with an effective tool or an app or something, or a technology that would screen out some of those. And the FTC did promote one. They awarded a winner called Nomo Robo, and that's NOMOROBO. And that's just a free app that you can download to help screen out some more of these phone calls. The one thing that I have to add about that, though, is that service only filters out voice over internet phone calls. So it is effective on your phone, but it only will screen out those calls that are coming over voice over internet. So, not the perfect solution, but a free service, a free tool. We don't advocate or promote any here at DATCAP, but the FTC did, and then the FTC promotes that one on their website.
Awesome. So some great tips, for people who are using cell phones or landlines. Let's see. There's a couple of requests for different phone numbers. So is there a phone number that people can call to get on the do not call list, or do they just go to the DATCAP website?
You can do both. If you go to our website and just type in do not call, we'll take you to a page. We'll give you a link to register right away. We'll give you a phone number. I should know the 800 phone number by heart, but I don't. So great question there. I have it. The do not call registry number is 888-382-1222.
Awesome. I'm going to drop that phone number in the chat, and I'll be sure to include it in we'll send an email after this as well that kind of goes over all of these resources. So I'll be sure to include the do not call list phone number. Great. And then do you guys have you mentioned the helpline. I'm not going to ask, do you have a phone number? You have a helpline phone number. What is that phone number as well?
Well, the one thing I was going to mention on there also is that you can call our phone number, which is 800-422-7128. And one of our self-service options is to go ahead and enter your number into the registry. And so that'll take you there as well, one of those two phone numbers.
Perfect. All right. We have a longer question here from Sandy, and she says, when I get text on my cell phone, can I click on the text to read what it says without an issue? I wouldn't click on a link, but I can't even tell what it includes without clicking on the text. I've gotten some that say it's from Mandela Barnes, but I don't dare click on it. I've also gotten several from Amazon, but I've taken the time to connect with Amazon and they say it's not them. So how can I turn these people in? There's no number I can see without clicking on it. So there's a few questions in there. So let's start with, like, if I get a text message, can I click on the text just to read the body of it?
Yeah, we haven't experienced a lot of scams or fraud or any criminal activity just by opening the message. Opening the message usually is pretty safe and you're okay. I love hearing that they said, I'm aware that I don't click on any links. That's the real guidance that we would give. So opening it up and saying, hey, who's this really from? What is it? Not aware of any criminal stuff that happens from that.
Awesome. And then they say they've gotten some that say they're from Mandela Barnes, and I don't dare click on it. And so I would say if you're wanting to connect with the Mandela Barnes campaign, you can do that by reaching out directly to them. But this kind of brings up a question that Sandy didn't ask, but that I want to ask you, Michael. You know, when you're talking about, you know, large organizations like Amazon, a lot of the times they have a place where you can kind of report that someone is impersonating them. But if it's like Mandela Barnes or my super local pharmacy, you know, how do I tell them they've been scammed? Like what's kind of, or that they're being impersonated, sorry. What's kind of like the best step there if I think someone's being impersonated?
I think the best step is to call us and to let us know here at DATCAP of what's going on. So let's use the Mandela Barnes example. What will happen in that scenario is if we receive a complaint where they say, hey, I've got this, I'm not quite sure, we'll send a courtesy letter over to Mandela Barnes campaign and say, just so you know, we received this. It's just for awareness as a heads up of what's going on so they have it. That's probably the best. You are correct. There are some of the bigger corporations that will have a fraud notification, and so they can follow up. The goal that I think what they do, and I can't speak for all of them, but similar to what we do, is we look for patterns and consistency and any unique factors to that particular scam. And most of the time, what we're trying to do is just make sure we bring awareness quickly to everyone to say, hey, watch out for this. Amazon is we can each month we look for trends. Amazon is always in the top 5 scams and calls that we get, has been consistently, because I mean there's so many Amazon users and so it's so easy to do and there's so many variations of it that seem legitimate if you're a user. But I would do what you said. First, contact us, give us a heads up. We'll try and do what we can to bring awareness, and then the second is reach out to them directly.
Awesome. So, you know, when she's talking about turning people in and reporting to you, you've mentioned, you know, DATCAP does this work. The Federal Trade Commission on a federal level does consumer protection. You know, there's also organizations like FCC, the Better Business Bureau, Senior Medicare Patrol, all of these different organizations that are kind of working on consumer protection. So one thing I want to ask, because we've mentioned reporting a couple of times, if they report to you, to DATCAP, is that the end of where they should report, or should they also report to FTC? Like, you know, I think sometimes people maybe don't report because they don't know where to start. So in terms of like turning these people in, where's the best place to start?
The two that I would recommend are us at DATCAP and then the FTC. They have a portal called Consumer Sentinel that allows you to report, and then it also allows you to get some information back and look at what are some of these trends. They offer a service that you can research certain businesses, or even, you know, even if you're, I don't know if it would come up, but you could put in political campaigns or, you know, Mandela Barnes and see, you know, how many scams, is this legitimate? And you might discover, wow, you know, 300 people have also gotten this text message. And it's a really great tool to go in. And the more that you record, the more that you understand, okay, this is happening elsewhere. It probably is a scam. Or perhaps you go in there, you typed it in, you realize there's none. Huh? Well, maybe that was legitimate. You could be the first, maybe you're just the first to report it, or it could just be legitimate. So those are the two areas I would really encourage everyone, because it gives us a great pulse, and we work very closely with FTC to try and make sure we share awareness of what's going on. And they of course are nationwide, but they'll say, hey, Wisconsin, we've received an influx of complaints about X. Just want to make sure you're aware, and we'll follow up on it.
Awesome. I will just make one more plug for reporting, because I know sometimes people also don't want to report because it's kind of like, oh, well, so-and-so's not going to be able to do anything about it. And I just want to reiterate what Michael has said a few times, that it takes all of this data to kind of recognize patterns to then be able to connect it back to the culprit or to get more information about the culprit. So I will just say, if you suspect a scam, even if you haven't given away information or money, you just like have a phone number or an email address or something like that, your piece of information could be like the critical last piece. So I always recommend that people report, with the caveat of saying, like, you may not get exactly the closure you're looking for, but it will help lead to action. So always report. DATCAP is happy to get all of your complaints and reports.
If I could add one thing, Courtney, and
Yeah.
we've tried to make it super easy. If you call our hotline, we have a self-service option that lets you just enter that number, and it'll take you 30 seconds. And to your point, we've made a lot of really big cases off of one phone number. Backtracking, figure out where it goes. It's never just one phone call, and it leads to a lot more. So great advice.
Awesome. We're kind of getting near the end of our session, so I will just quickly say, if you have more questions for Michael about robocalls, drop them in the chat or the Q&A. I do just want to quickly ask, because you did just mention that you are able to kind of close in on some of these people based on specific data. So who have you guys caught? Like, I guess, who have you been able to take action against?
Yeah, so there's a couple companies that were, and you mentioned it earlier, which is probably why I smirked, of auto warranty, 2 auto warranty companies that were coming through. We were able to hold them accountable for what was going on. We had a student loan debt company. We have a lot of debt companies that we can hold accountable for these calls. Another one are these timeshare resellers. They'll call and say, we've got this offer to help you get out of this. Some of them are tax debt relief. And I say these are not examples of what could be used. These are all examples of cases we've successfully identified who the culprit was, and then either had some type of enforcement action or negotiated a resolution that prohibits them from making those phone calls anymore.
Awesome. Yeah, I think sometimes, people hear the stories about this stuff happening and they assume like it's not happening in Wisconsin, or like it couldn't happen to me. So it's good to know, have specific examples of the kinds of things that are happening, and also the kinds of people you've been able to follow up on. So awesome. We're kind of, like I said, we're coming to the end. I don't see any more attendee questions. So I'm going to do just a couple of quick plugs for AARP Fraud Watch Network. So AARP has this free resource, aarp.org/fraudwatchnetwork. You can go there to find information about robocalls and all the different kinds of scams that are perpetrated by robocall. And you can also find on our website, we have a podcast. You can report scams to AARP, and we share that information with like the Federal Trade Commission. So you can rest assured that we're not just hoarding data, we're sharing it with consumer protection agencies. And one kind of unique thing that we have is support groups. So if you think that you have been the victim of a scam, or you just want to talk about kind of the emotional impact, we didn't get into a lot of details about different kinds of scams today, but sometimes they can be threatening and intimidating, and it's scary to deal with these people. It's scary to know your information is out there. and AARP wanted to help address those kind of emotional impacts. So we have free online support groups. Again, you can find information about that on our website. And we do also have a helpline. We usually connect people with local resources. So, we have trained volunteers who, again, can just kind of talk you through the experience. If you're looking for action to be taken or mediation, I definitely still recommend reaching out to DATCAP. So that's kind of the Fraud Watch Network. Again, you'll get that information in the follow-up email along with this recording. Michael, I'm going to ask you for closing comments, but I see there's one more question from an attendee. So I'm going to grab that before we go. Caller ID comes up on our phone and it tells us that it is a spam risk and we hit do not call. Does that stop the calls or does it just stop that one particular call?
Well, depending on the software, it stops that one particular call. There's some programs where you can click block and it'll block that particular number from ever coming back.
Awesome. And I will just say quickly too, sometimes, you block a particular number and they're just going to call you from what is a different phone number. So you could block numbers ad infinitum and still keep going. So awesome. Thank you so much, Michael, for being here today. I want to give you the floor to kind of give us your final thoughts, comments, parting wisdom.
Well, thank you. I hope that some of this information we shared today was more helpful and not just common sense that we're trying to get past and say, hey, here's some real tools that you can use, but also to bring awareness in the real world scenarios that we're talking about. And also recognize that it's going to change. What we're talking about here today, next year, if we have an opportunity to again, that could change. But the one pitch I do want to make, and it follows on with all the great resources that AARP offers, and we work hand in hand to bring those and share that message. Our website, we take a lot of, I guess I take a lot of pride in the resources we offer that are not just kind of this obligatory, hey, we should let you know that this exists. We tailor them to be a more layman's read. So it's actually enjoyable to get the information and have up-to-date ideas of what's going on in the kind of this culture. And we have a lot of fact sheets. You mentioned one of the scams. One is a telemarketing that will give you a whole list of all the things to be awareness, how it works, what it means. I know you guys have some of those as well. So I would encourage everyone, if you have a chance, you want to go look or learn a little bit more, our website does that. And the other is, if you participate in any organizations, whether it be social or whatnot, we have outreach specialists that will come out into the community and they'll talk to your group, whether it's about robocalls or scams, to help share more information and give a little bit more detail on those. So my parting message is call us, email us, visit the website. We're here to help and we love to talk.
Awesome. Thank you again, Michael, and thanks everyone for joining us. You'll get all of these resources and links and the recording in a follow-up email. Next month, we'll be talking about cybersecurity and online shopping with the Better Business Bureau. So hopefully we'll see you for that as well. And until then, thanks again and stay safe.